Good evening. Welcome to the November 25th, 2024 Troy City Council meeting. This evening, we're honored to have Suzanne Martinez from Kensington Community Church to provide our invocation. So I'll ask you to come forward and please rise for that invocation and then remain standing for a special pledge of allegiance.
Father God, we thank you this evening for the city of Troy, for the beauty of its diverse residents and cultures that are represented here, each and every resident created in your image. This evening, we ask for wisdom and unity for our council members and mayor as they make decisions for the good of all citizens. We thank you for our council members, mayor, first responders, city staff, and all who make Troy a place we are proud to call home. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call forward the Troy Cub Scout Pack 1708 from Wass Elementary to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. You want to come up? You can just kind of fill in. It's a good group. I met with them a little bit before the meeting. So. You start when you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I told them we'd give them a minute to go ahead and go so they don't have to sit through our budget presentation and the audit findings, but we'll just hang tight for 1 second. Well, thank you to Suzanne Martinez from Kensington Community Church and to Scout Pack 1708 from Wass for starting us off with some good community feelings. I appreciate that. I'll call the November 25th, 2024 meeting to order and ask for the roll call for Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga?
Here.
Councilmember Chanda?
Here.
Councilmember Gunn?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up, we have certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have C1, an audit presentation for the City of Troy 2024, and there are 3 components to that, so I will turn it over to our CFO, Rob Melzek, and he can start things off.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Appreciate you guys having us here tonight. Really looking forward tonight because we have an excellent audit report for you. And last year when we had our first year with Yo and Yo as our auditors, we had them do the presentation, and we did not present anything as a finance team. This year, I thought it was prudent, and I asked permission of City Manager Nastasi to, if we could have my team present to you guys and do what I'm calling a mini community academy. We're going to hopefully keep it to 1 slide a person, or we are keeping it to 1 slide per person. And so why do I want to do a community academy for you guys? 2 weeks ago, the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, they were both here when we had the community academy. It was the graduation. We had 22 people that went through, got diplomas that the mayor handed out. And while we were there, it was amazing that I always think of finances as maybe a little bit on the boring side or something like that, but the feedback from the 22 participants was incredible, and I'm sure the team behind me can tell you. We heard things like, we're really happy that you guys are so transparent. Your professionalism was amazing. And lastly, quote unquote, I'm glad that my city is in good hands. So what we thought was, with everything that's been going on since the state of the city about talking about capital and everything, I wanted to bring this full circle for you guys tonight to see what type of shape our financial statements are in, the team that's responsible for it, and then lastly, I'm going to close at the very end about what we've done since the state of the city. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to our partner, Alan Panter. He's from Yo and Yo. This is year 2 of our audit. And one thing I just want to mention, one last little tidbit to this, is our audit report is dated this year, October 31st. In my 9 years at Warren and my 5 years here in Troy, I have never had an audit report dated in October. We're here before Thanksgiving. all the time, it's always been done in December. I looked back in some old records and saw actually a few audit reports given in January. So this is incredible, and a lot of the credit goes to the team of Yo and the 4 people behind me. And so I'm just really proud of that fact. But I'm going to hand it over to Alan and give you the independent auditor's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alan Panter. I'm a partner at Yo and I'm here to present the audit. I suppose the materials that you have, you've been distributed the city's annual comprehensive financial report. Oh, thanks, Rob. You have the bound single audit, the governance letter, and you also have the presentation, which you see up on the screen. So I plan to walk you through the presentation here, give you a few key takeaways. I don't plan on going into a real deep level of detail with anything. As Rob said, the audit went very well. The finance staff at the city did a great job of responding to our information requests, to answering all of our questions, and to working with us throughout the course of the audit. So we really appreciate how well prepared the city was. We were here in September for the bulk of our field work. We were able to draft the report, turn it around, get it reviewed, and everything went very smoothly. So as Rob said, the audit was issued in October, which is, very good in my experience. So we worked with quite a few people at the city during the audit, and particularly with the finance teams. We'd really like to thank the folks that you see sitting here, especially under Rob and Kyle's leadership. We really appreciate all the hard work that they did in order to help us out with the audit process. So the audit included an examination of internal controls and certain aspects of legal compliance. And as a part of that, we have a responsibility to communicate in writing when we find issues with internal controls or certain aspects of legal compliance. And I am, based on that consideration, I am pleased to report that we have no audit findings, no management letter comments. So that is a very positive reflection on the city, its management, and it also tends to shorten my audit presentations when I don't have a bunch of findings to talk about. So that's very good. So my plan for this evening is to give you an overview of the audit and to give you a few highlights from the financial statements and to answer any questions that you have. So please, as I said, I'll follow the presentation. Okay, the first slide deals with the independent auditor's report. The purpose of an audit is to give you an opinion on your financial statements, not to detect fraud and not to give assurance on internal control. So it's an important concept about what it is that we're here to do. We're here to give you an opinion on your financial statements, which is what you see referenced here. We're giving so this is our opinion on your financial statements. We're giving an unmodified or clean opinion that is the best opinion you can get. And it means a couple of things. It means, first of all, the statements are formatted in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So in other words, everything that's supposed to be in the statements is there. And also based on the procedures that we perform, the numbers are good. So unmodified opinion is definitely what you want to see. Okay. This next slide is really just a definition because I have a few graphs that are going to follow this that kind of depend on this. So I want to define this term of governmental funds. And what that is all of your funds that are not self-supporting by user fees. So that would be your general fund, your special revenue funds, capital projects funds, all those sorts of things. It does not include things like water, sewer, golf course, which I'll deal with separately. Okay, so that's kind of the point of this, is I just want to sort of set the stage for these next few. I have a few graphs to show you here that are going to give you some high-level and historical financial information. So fund balance, or governmental revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. So this graph here shows a 5-year trend in our governmental funds. So that's, again, the general funds, special revenue funds, and capital project funds, and the like. And you can see revenues, expenditures, and then the lines on it are charted as the fund balance, total fund balance, and then the capital outlay is also the black line. So a few things to take away from this. You can see that the revenues have bounced around a bit, but are up significantly this year, and I have a slide about that on the next slide. So the revenue, or the expenditures were pretty much flat from 2020 through 2022, but then you can see that the expenditures are up the last 2 years. There's different reasons for that. Last year, there was higher capital spending, and also you can see that capital line kind of trending up a little bit last year, and then it trended up even more this year. So you got your capital expenditures up, and last year the voluntary fire incentive program was closed out, so that was a significant expense that the city incurred, so that drove up the expenses some too. And then this year, those expenses went away, but the capital kind of made the expenses the same. So you can see that the expenses this year and last year are pretty much the same. They're very close to each other. So some good trends there. Next one is, this is just concentrating on revenue. And what we did here is we took each of the significant revenue streams that the city has, and we plotted them out so that you can see the trends by type of revenue. So you can see property taxes. Those are trending upwards with your taxable value increases in the city. Intergovernmental, you can see that that's up quite a bit because the city had significant federal revenues this year. The ARPA dollars, with the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, were expended this year. So those federal grant revenues are showing up. And the other thing here, it doesn't show up real well on the graph, but it makes a big difference in the numbers, is the investment earnings. You can see that the last 3 years the city has incurred investment losses, but this year there was a gain. So there's about a $3 million turnaround between the loss last year and the gain this year. So that's a good positive note as well. Next page, expenditures, same type of graph. You can see that the biggest cost center is public safety, and that's very common. You can see last year, you can see the big spike in public safety expenditures, but then this year is much more back to what looks like very normal level of expenditures. And then you can see the capital outlay over to the right going up. So those are investments, and I've got another slide. My next slide is actually capital outlay. So, but you can see those investments in your community going up each year as well. The next page deals with capital outlay, and these are capital items, streets and buildings and parks and everything you can imagine, equipment, everything that you need to provide services to your residents is listed in these, is listed here under capital outlay. And you can see that in 2023 and 2024, the city made significant investments in capital items, much exceeding what was done in 2019 through 2021. And I understand that there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but you've made some good progress here with some of the capital needs that the city has. Next slide deals with fund balance. I showed you a slide that was a combined fund balance. This kind of breaks it down. There's components of fund balance: non-spendable, restricted. So restricted means those are outside restrictions. Unassigned is only your general fund. That's the amount that's available for discretionary spending. So you can see that the city has spent down some of those restricted funds that have been around since some of the COVID programs, and the unassigned increased this year. And really the unassigned increased because your revenues were up and your expenditures were about the same. So that all pretty much fell to the bottom line in the unassigned there. Okay, that's all I had for the governmental funds. I want to quickly touch on water and sewer. And first, the water fund. So these graphs deal separately with the water fund and the sewer fund. I like to use these graphs to analyze funds like this that are supported by user charges because it helps to see the historical trends that drive the results that we're seeing. So the format of the graph here is you can see the revenues and expenses are the bars there. And then you can see the green bar, the green line there is the fund balance, and then the yellow line is the net investment in capital assets. So that's your water system minus depreciation. So if that line is flat like it is, that means that your annual investments in your water system are keeping up with the depreciation that's being booked there. So you want to see that either going flat or up. You don't want to see it going down. So that's a nice shape there with that yellow line at the top. The other thing that I take away from this is that in the revenues and expenses, you can see that the expenses exceed the revenues a little bit each year. And so that means that the costs of running your system are not being fully recovered by your user charges. And this is going on for at least 5 years, as you can see from the graph here. And you can also see that your the fund balance is trending downward as well. So that green line shows that your fund balance is getting fairly low. So that's something that definitely needs to be kept an eye on. I know that the city has a program of raising its rates on a regular basis. I know that's something that you guys are looking at. I just think that the numbers here kind of bear out that it does deserve additional attention going forward. Okay. Sewer fund graph is formatted the same way. You can see again here that the expenses exceed the revenues and probably by a wider margin. You can see that the fund balance is trending down as well, although it's not quite as low as the water fund. There is still about $8.1 million in fund balance, which is about 51% of what you need to operate that fund. So this fund is in a little bit better situation. But that downward trend in the fund balance is definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, I want to touch on the governance letter. That's a letter that we distribute with the audit. The letter discloses any estimates that are used in preparation of the financial statements, any new accounting standards, some informational items, discusses any difficulties that we had, which of course we had none of those, disagreements, any misstatements we noted, none, and if we had any management letter comments, those would be here as well. And of course, like I said, we have none. So those are all positive things. So that's the governance letter. And then the last thing deals with the single audit report. So as a recipient of federal grant expenditures, federal grants, the city expended this year about $9.6 million in various federal awards. We tested the ARPA program, the American Rescue Plan Act. That was about $6.8 million of those expenditures. And we did not have any internal control or compliance issues related to that testing that we did. So if you have any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions for Alan? Councilmember Gunn.
Well, first question is on the revenue. You have other. Can you give me kind of an example of some of the revenue that?
Basically, the way we put together this graph is we took the highest revenue areas, and then we just kind of grouped everything else together as other.
So no single thing stands out how the revenue would come in.
Other revenue?
Yeah, what goes into other revenue?
Those are administrative charges. So what happens is the general fund does a lot of different work for other funds like the DDA or the library or whatever. So in other words, a portion of my salary would be charged to those other funds.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then on the water, I know we're running kind of a deficit here on the revenue. So I mean, that would be basically we're just not charging enough.
Yeah. So it's funny. Alan really touched on what I was going to touch on right after his presentation. I wanted to bring this one up to you guys. So I put the water fund activity back up on the board. So as you see that trend, I've been here 5 years now, and in all 5 years we've had wet summers, right? And so people aren't using as much water as they used to. So there's two things that go primarily into the revenue of a water fund. That's your consumptions and the rate that you charge. So each year in the budget, we've always charged what the next year was. So we've had, like last year, we increased rates 6% or 6 or 7%. So we felt like we've kept up. But when Kyle, Kurt Bovenseep, and myself get together each year and go to do this at budget time, we keep thinking, oh, well, the consumptions are going to go back to normal. And they haven't. So one of the things I wanted to warn you guys that at budget time, we might be wrestling with higher rate increases than we normally have. And so I'm just wanted to give you that forewarning. You know what? Everyone talks about conservation and how great that is. It is great, but not when you're trying to run a fund.
Right. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions for Alan?
I just had one quick
Councilmember
question.
Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Just the governmental fund expenditures, that one spike for public safety in 2023, that was the payout for VPIP, right? That's why it was, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
I think you said that, but I just wanted to confirm.
Yep, that's correct.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranger.
Thank you, Mayor. Something that I latched onto, and first of all, Rob, thank you. Thank you to everyone in your whole team for this work on this. What I latched onto, the unassigned fund balance for the general fund, and that looks very strong to me, the 42.1%, above even our range of 20 to 30%. I recall in some of our budget meetings that we talked about, and down the road that we could potentially dip, and that would require, of course, a city manager sort of plan. But it looks like we're doing very well. Is there any reason for concern?
Right, so as it relates to the unassigned fund balance, no, this is great news. And City Manager Nastasi and myself, we've talked about this at length, that we have two options really that we could do. One is what my original plan was to do was to, at budget time in February when we start working on the numbers and deliver to you guys a budget in April, that we would probably be transferring approximately $4 to $5 million into the capital fund, and that will help with our capital expenditures for the given year. Next council meeting, you're going to see a report on EMS. At some point, I'm sure you guys are going to be doing study sessions on that, and so if we need to take those dollars earlier, we have that right to do with a budget amendment, and so whatever the pleasure of the council will be, but I think that that's the most prudent plan at this point.
Sounds good, and just these numbers look good, so I feel optimistic even going into those conversations.
Yeah, if we were a public company, we would, our stock would go up today.
But we're not.
But we're not.
So our stock's going down.
No, seriously, really, I explain this to my team this way, is when you start an audit every year, you have 10 issues, and Alan can maybe agree with this. You have 10 issues. 5 go positive, 5 go negative. Last year, we had the mother load of all negative items with VFIP, right? This year, all 10 items went positive for us. And so this is the result of a very good year.
Thank you. Additional questions for Alan before we get the actual Finance Department presentation? Councilmember Chanda.
Yeah, since you're on that slide, I just wanted to, I think you mentioned, but I can't remember. What is the assigned fund balance? What exactly does it mean for?
Do you want to go, or do you want me to?
Well, those are just amounts that are assigned, which means that's a statement of intention is what that is it's intended. What it's for, actually what it's assigned for, I'm not sure.
Sure. So $3 million is assigned for potential legal issues that we may have, like lawsuits that come up. The other biggest item in there is each year when we do a budget, if our general fund is at a loss situation, we have to assign those dollars to the future year. So I believe that was like 1.3 million or so this year.
Assigned but not spent yet.
You got it.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
And then the follow-up question is on the unassigned balance. I mean, do you guys probably it will come up during the budget discussion, that projection of how things would look like in the next few years based on change in population, new developments and things
That's
like
right.
that. So.
Yep. And I know the mayor mentioned it at his State of the City that we always do budget conservatively, and that's something that my predecessors have done, and I really like to do that. I'm conservative by nature. The state of Michigan has a track record of giving us unfunded mandates. They do take away some revenue sharing when things get tough in their world. So that's why I believe it's prudent to be conservative when you budget.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful work, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions before we get to the next part of the presentation? Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right, so I've been here 5 years now, and when Mark Miller, Bob Bruner, and Jeanette Menig hired me, Mark's directive was to fix the finance team, and currently my team is made up of 26 employees, 21 full-time, 5 part-time. What's interesting is, with myself included, 66% of us are new since I started, so we've had a turnover. The 4 people behind you, I had the privilege of hiring, so I feel like it's we're all one team, and I love it. Two of them were hired from the outside, two were internal, so I feel like two of them were outside hires and two of them were internal hires, so I feel like it's a good mix. It gives the motivation for people to know that they can get promoted, and it also gives the fresh faces that I feel like every organization needs. So with me being here 5 years, the rest of them have been in their positions for 3 years, and what's really cool about that is we're really hitting our stride as a team. And so from that point, I'm going to defer to them for the next 4 or 5 slides, and I'm going to pass it over to Kelly Tim, our city assessor, who's been here for 3.5 years, and she's just been doing a fantastic job. So I'm going to pass it over to her.
Good evening, City Council. As you can see, let's get to the, that's okay. For fiscal year ending 2024, our property tax revenue was a little bit over $62 million. It was an increase of 7.55%. The taxable value was the largest taxable value increase since Proposal A has passed. It increased 7.55%. Out of that, 5% was the inflation rate, Consumer Price Index. 1.55% was the new that was added from new construction. 1% of that was uncapping of taxable value when a property transfers ownership. The City of Troy remains 4th in the state of Michigan for a total taxable valuation. Some revenue enhancements that we have done in the assessing department, the staff in the assessing department. We implemented an annual audit of personal property accounts. So after they file their statements, we actually go out there and get their balance sheet and audit the ones that we think are not filing correctly. We annually value the land, even though we don't have any vacant land sales. We are able to extract the land residual value out of a sale price. And we've implemented an annual reappraisal of existing properties. So we're out there visiting properties, making sure that everything that we have on their record card is correct. So we're busy increasing the taxable value so that the taxes can increase, so that purchasing can increase, and then Kyle's here to audit that to make sure we're doing it correctly. So next is Renee Hazen, the city treasurer, and she's going to talk about interest income.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Kelly said, I'm Renee Hazen. I'm the city treasurer, and I'm going to speak briefly about interest income. Last fiscal year, the city's investments yielded between 4.8 and 5.5% interest, resulting in earnings of $4.5 million citywide. The general fund's share of this was $2.5 million. For comparison, in the 5 fiscal years ending in 2022, the general fund averaged just $450,000 annually. In fiscal year ending 2023, that number jumped to $995,000, an increase of 120%. For last fiscal year, the increase was 150% over the previous year. I want to highlight 2 investment strategies that have been implemented in order to capitalize on these favorable interest rates. In the fall of 2022, we started investing the money normally held in the city's checking account for current year operations. For these short-term investments, we use Michigan Class, which is a pooled investment fund for Michigan public entities. This fund averaged 5.4% last fiscal year. Further enhancing the city's earnings was the implementation of what's called the J Fund, which is offered through our bank. This instrument automatically sweeps the balance of the city's checking account into investments at the end of each day. Those same funds are available the very next morning if they are needed. That means that the value of all uncashed checks from our vendor runs is invested and currently earning well above 4%. This continues until each of those checks clears the bank. This fund, this J fund, has averaged just over 5% last fiscal year. As we all know, interest rates have started to decline. Michigan class is currently at 4.8%, down from its highest point of 5.55 in December of 2023. So although we will probably see reduced earnings this fiscal year, interest income will most likely continue to be a strong revenue line item. So thank you. That's all I have. And I will turn it over to Emily Frontera, the city's purchasing manager.
Thanks, Renee.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Let me change this. I'm Emily Frontera, purchasing manager for the city. You may have seen my name on one or two memos that have come across your desk periodically. I'm just going to discuss some of our procurement methods, some of our common procurement methods. So as Kelly and Renee had said, they collect the money and now I get to spend it. So some of the purchasing processes. Formal bids are posted and awarded based on best pricing. So these bids are commodity items. They're items that are same from vendor to vendor. So we award these based on low prices. The next type of bid is a best value bid, and that is for items that are more service-oriented or have more involved projects. And those are awarded based on the value of the proposal, which is evaluated by a committee. The committee is a few staff members, and they evaluate all of the proposals and then select a high-rated vendor and then submit it for award. Some of the examples of these would be currently for the best bid. We've got the brush cutter on today's meeting. We also have turnout gear, so that's low price award item. We've had, as far as best value, we've had the pavilion, which was rated on their the proposal value. We've had the cricket field awarded that way, as well as medical services. A third option that we utilize in the purchasing department are cooperative contracts. Those are contracts that have been solicited by local, state, county, and national entities or governments. And they share those contracts with us. So they've done all of the procurement process, they've done all of the bidding and awarded, and we get to utilize the great pricing that they bring to us. Some of the examples of those are State of Michigan My Deal, Oakland County Cooperative Program, Mitten, which are local entities or governments that share their bid contracts, and then Omnia and Sourcewell. Some of those examples are salt through the My Deal, vehicles we buy through My Deal, water meters we buy through the Oakland County contracts. We also use vehicles through the Mitten contracts, and fuel. With Sterling Heights, we purchase all of our fuel through their cooperative contract. And then Omnia Partners, we also purchase from them. We've done PD flock cameras, some of the play structures that are in the parks. Through our process, we have been able to save in fiscal year 2024 almost $1.5 million. This just shows what type of advantage we have in our purchasing process and the cost savings that we can get from our methods. So just wanted to highlight a couple things, say thank you, and I'm going to send it over to Kyle, Kyle Veith, our controller. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Good evening.
Hi, Kyle.
So, as Emily mentioned, My name is Kyle Veith. I'm our controller, and I've been with the city now for just over 3 years, overseeing our grants and assisting with the audits, budgets, and other areas in the finance department. So since I got here in 2021, or the peak of the pandemic, we've received about $16.5 million of, I'd say, newer funded grants. So we can really look at these in 3 different buckets. The first one being our ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act. We received about $8.2 million there, which was used for our fire ladder truck, the pavilion ice rink, and the beach road repaving. Our second bucket of funding would be the community project funding grants, which we've received now 4 different awards for about $5.5 million, and we've worked closely with Haley Stevens and her office to secure these fundings. And you can see we've gotten a wide range of, infrastructure, recreation, and different types of projects that they've selected based on what we've submitted. And then the last bucket I'd look at would be our state grants, which we've been very successful with, working with Sharon McDonald on getting the cricket pitch, about $1 million there, and then another fire truck working with State Senator Weber for about $2 million there. And for that fire truck, we just purchased that last Friday. It went out in the truck run, but it's gonna be about 3 years until we see that truck. So it's pretty interesting to see the lead time on those trucks. And then not included in that $16.5 million, we have some other significant grants. We have our MDOT Rochester Road project, which is well exceeded over the 10 million mark. We have the transportation alternative programs, which will hit about a little under 2 million. And then we have our CDBG funding for some senior services, and then a new inclusive park, which you'll hear more about shortly in the public hearing, which is next on the agenda. So while these are a lot of our main grants, we also have a lot of smaller grants too, but just didn't make it to the sheet. And then I know Rob said 1 slide per person, but I actually have 2. So the last piece I'm going to cover is our budget to actual results for the general fund, which you did see a little bit of. Just in the financial statements, if you want to see, a good page would be page 27. It has this in more detail. On the revenue side, we did exceed budget by about $5.4 million. So some of the main drivers there were our property taxes of about $1 million, investment earnings of $2 million, and then state shared revenues and grants exceeding that by about $1.7 million. And then on the expenditure side, we were below budget by about $5 million, which is consistent with the previous years. As Rob mentioned, we take a very conservative approach to our budgeting. And then we've also had various cost savings amongst the various departments due to open positions and also good healthcare cost. And then as Emily showed previously, we've had a lot of purchasing savings too to help with this. And then we're just really good stewards of the city's funds. So we just try to do our best. And with that, I'm gonna kick it back over to Rob.
Thank you, Kyle.
So I was hoping that you guys would see those are the faces behind all the hard work that went into this great financial report this year, along with their team. Again, we have 26 folks that work hard on that. All the department heads are critical too, the ones that are in the back of the room there tonight and everyone else that's not here. So again, I wanted to thank you. One of the things that I asked City Manager Nastasi if I had the permission to do, and he granted it to me to do, is then try to bring this full circle for all of us. 6 months and 3 days ago, we were all in a really hot room at the training center, and the mayor gave a wonderful speech for the state of the city. And I wanted to give some quotes from it, and so we could talk about where we are headed and what we've done. So 6 months and 3 days ago, the mayor talked about how we're in good financial shape. And I think we just proved that, Alan with his audit report and the financial statements that you saw, we are in good financial shape. However, the mayor did talk about Troy's future and how we have to do some serious planning. He talked about our capital needs and our infrastructure. He talked about the city of Troy turning 70 this coming year and having a birthday. And he also talked about what do the next 30 years bring and as we go to the centennial of this great city. The mayor also quoted and said he wants to make sure that that we are stronger for the next generation. How the city was built, he talked about, was through debt financing. We utilized our AAA bond rating. And lastly, he talked about being bold and being leaders. One thing I would personally like to add to that is we can't be fearful. I think we have seen a great need of the capital that's out there. And I want to tell you, through City Manager Nastasi's leadership, what we've done in that last 6 months and 3 days. Emily Frontera, who you just heard from, she put together an RFP for architect design, for schematic design and opinion of costs for a new library. The RFP will close on December 19th, and the committee, which will be made up of another Emily, this Emily Dumas, Emily Frontera, Kurt Bovenseep, and I don't know who else is on that committee, but that's going to be talked about then. Then it'll go before council, and we're asking for the architect to be done by May 30th, a report due. So that's facet number one that we've been doing. Number two, gathered the facilities team, Dennis Trantham, Kurt Bovenseep, Kyle, Emily, myself, some other department heads, and we've worked through Frank's leadership to get a needs list, not a wants list, but a needs list for a potential debt financing. Third thing we've done is the finance team has worked with our municipal financial consultant to obtain possible millage rates based upon interest rates, taxable value that we get from Kelly, and amount of debt that we might want to finance. I'll leave you lastly with page 127 of our audit report. I have it here. Page 127 shows a computation of direct and overlapping debt for the city of Troy. In there, it shows City of Troy at top with direct debt of $9 million. Then it shows all the school districts that we share in. Birmingham, $281 million. Bloomfield Hills, $200 million. Troy School District, $252 million. Warren Con School District, $210 million. And I go back to my words that I just said about being fearful. I think we need to show the community the needs that we have and put it to a vote of them and let them decide what is best for the city. So I know you guys have meetings coming up. You have a city manager to choose, and you also have meetings coming up for a schedule. I'm hoping that we can meet with you in an advanced type setting in February, maybe March, to discuss the steps that we've already taken, and with your guidance, maybe what we can do as a team. So I'll leave you with that. And I hope that you have some questions for our team as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Opportunity for questions from Rob or anybody on the team. We'll start with Councilmember Hamilton.
Hi, Rob.
Nice try, Rob. Get back up there.
Yeah, sorry.
You said the RFP for the library will close on December 19th.
Correct.
So when should council expect that to come to us? And this is RFP for design, kind of to design.
The schematic design and the cost.
Ultimately, it would go to a vote of the people for the final
Correct.
thing, right?
Yep. But we have to get you as the decision body numbers.
Sure. And then this needs list, really appreciate that. I think that's something all of us on council was looking for. And I'm excited. And you'll have kind of loose numbers on that for us for the advance.
Absolutely, yeah. So yes. So Dennis Trantham's really our subject matter expert on a lot of these items, and we met a couple times, and then on the third time that we met, we pared up or down some of the numbers, tried to make them more realistic, and we've got them into different categories, needs, some wants, and again, that would be the decision of this council if we move forward.
And we'll have to put that in context of EMS as well, just coming up.
Correct, and that's why this is a fluid situation, right? I wanted to tell you that this audit report here was awesome, right? And that the headwinds in that report were the water fund and maybe the sewer fund too, but definitely the water fund. But just like we have learned in the 5 years I've been here, we had a pandemic, we had VFIP, we don't know what's around the corner. EMS is going to be interesting in 2 weeks. Is Pete here today? Pete's here today, so Pete can tell you. I'm sure Pete's going to be on stage in 2 weeks, or next time we meet, the 9th.
Okay. Yeah, and in the future, I'm hoping we can do a wants list, but I'm sure the needs list is pretty packed that's where we're at the moment, but thank you for it.
Yeah, and you know what's really pretty cool is, yeah, I'll stop there, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
February, March sounds fine. If you'd like us in January, I will do what I need to do to make myself available as soon as you need us, and I'm sure my colleagues are in the same frame of mind. We share your anxiousness to get at this, so whatever timing is right for the team that has to have that information ready for us to discern and look at, sooner rather than later is my preference. We hear about the library, we hear about pickleball, we hear about parks that need maintenance, we know there's roads needs, we know we have 57 aging, is it 57 aging buildings? Dennis Trantham may or may not be proud of me at the moment. Or Kurt.
He's not here.
He's not in. And I'm saying partly for the community that's watching us, that unassigned fund balance number that we're seeing, we need that desperately for the needs and wants. And I think everything I've articulated is a need. And so I just say to you, look at that calendar and come at us, and we'll, well, the city manager would need to, whoever we appoint will need to look at that calendar, but our residents are rightfully anxious, and we're getting beat up, rightfully, keep beating us up, you should be, and I want to convey, we're hearing that.
Thank you. City Manager Nastasi, we just talked about it today, right?
Yes.
In a meeting where I think we gave you, to give us some dates, right? Your guys' calendar. We were going to do it with us internally so we can match that up and hopefully in January, February, March, find a date.
It'll be coming out in December, going out to you guys to pick the day. Sooner the better, I agree. So that's what the goal is, moving toward that.
All right. I'll move down the list.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for this presentation. I think it is so important, and all of the things that you're telling us, you know, this is stuff that we've been talking about in the advance, and I'm really happy to see that we're starting to make some movement towards this because time is of the essence with all of these things. The other question I had, because you mentioned March, does that give us enough time? Because I know the advance, we're kind of trying to prepare for the budget season. I mean, is March soon enough, or is February better? I don't know. You know, you said March, but.
You know, I'll say this. I would love to sit down with Dennis, Kurt, Emily Frontera, Kyle, obviously, City Manager Nastasi, and like get us in a room and come up with what date would be best for us when we think we're ready to go and stuff like that. But we're with you. We want to move.
I think consensus at council is to do it, I'd rather do January than March, but I understand it could be later January, February, but I think there's an urgency on all that we're all facing.
As soon as possible.
March seems like, when you said March, it like.
Okay.
I know, I was concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I just wanted to get it to council to pick during December so we can try to set it up in January. February would be my fallback, but I'm pushing for, you know, a Saturday in January. But it has to do with everyone's schedule, of course, so if we need to go to February to accommodate everyone, we will, but I'm shooting for January.
Thank you. That's what I was getting to.
All right, sorry.
Okay, fair.
Councilmember Gunn.
Yeah, can you explain, you point out 127, the school debt and how that's relating to Troy?
Sure, yeah. So what this is trying to show you as a resident of Troy, how much debt you truly have. So like we say, oh, just the city up top, you have $9 million. But oh, by the way, look at the very first line. The Avondale debt, Avondale's made up of 19.17% of it's made up of Troy residents.
Okay.
So then you take 19% of that 88 million, and that's the 16.9 million. So that amount is added to the layer of how much debt we truly have as a community.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep, very
Okay,
much.
perfect.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crango.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Rob, for that kind of call to action that you're encouraging us on council. Couple questions, 3 small ones. The first relates to the grants list that Kyle presented. And this is more, I know the answer to it is more just to state it publicly, and it's something I think we need to think about as a council when we communicate. So when you get these grants, these earmarks, again, I know the answer, is they must be used for that particular purpose. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The reason why I say that, I was just speaking with a resident, a fellow mom from school, and I think her question was, you got this chunk of money for something, but why couldn't that have been put into these other needs that I see in the park? And I think that's where we got to communicate. When we do get these sorts of resources, they have to be used for a particular purpose. So just something for us to think about. Second question is around, it's Kelly's, what you presented around annual reappraisals. So I'm trying to remember from budget sessions, is it that those, depending on the occupancy in a building, that affects how it's appraised, and that's part of that
Yes.
reappraisal process, and
That would
affects
be-
how much you can tax the.
Correct. That would be the commercial properties, the office properties. The vacancy rate, we take that into consideration when we value the office buildings.
And overall, have you seen a difference from the past couple of years with some more folks going
We've
back
seen
into offices?
a decline in the vacancy rates. It's running about 18% right now. Our staff is out doing our personal property canvas right now. Last year, they were in 5-story office buildings, and it was dark. They had to find their way through it. They had to bring a flashlight. This year, more people are back into the office, so that's a promising feature of the vacancy rates.
And then that affects the resources that we're able to take
Correct.
in. So, thank you. Last question is, I think it's just good to state this. So we're the 4th highest in our taxable value. So I presume it's Detroit, Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, and us. Is that correct?
Yes,
I
that
think
is
that's
correct.
something that we should shout out more and be so proud of. So thank you.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. Councilmember Chanda, you have any questions?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, thank you for the presentation. It's really wonderful, and glad to see you guys are, tackling all the needs of the city. And I join my colleagues saying, let's do it as soon as possible, January or February, whenever. And I had a question for Emily. I think I understand, but for those who are watching, I mean, we see once in a while this no-bid contracts, to approve those. Are they all the cooperative contracts that are already established? I mean, by and large, is that the case?
No, a no bid, well, a no bid means that we did not take it out for bid. It did not fall under the cooperative. Staff found a particular need for this item, and so they did their research. They vetted different companies and said, this fits us, and this is what we need. So.
But in some cases, it could be that's the only supplier or only vendor that's.
Or the only supplier,
Only vendor
exactly,
or
yes,
supplier
yes.
that's doing. Okay.
Okay. My question, I have a couple of comments and a question. My actual question is kind of a procedural one. I was looking at minutes from previous meetings around the organizational time, and we typically renew our cooperative contract. We do a resolution. Is that something that's forthcoming? I can't, usually we do it in November, I feel like, with our organizational meeting. City Attorney Blue.
You do normally, but you have the same members who are on the council. So it really changes with, it's something that we do whenever there's a change in the composition of council.
That answers that question. Okay, so the other thing is I realized, Rob, that at least somebody was listening to my State of the City address, so I thank you for that. A little scary. The other thing is 6 months and 3 days ago means that we're now closer to the next one, which gives me a little bit of heartburn. But I appreciate you using some of my words back at us, and I look forward to having that conversation. We talked, I mean, I do think it's important that we have that advanced style meeting, and I think our residents, perhaps some of the library friends who are sitting a couple rows back, might be intrigued to hear some of those things. And so, again, we already said it, but the sooner we can get that going, I think the better for our city as a whole.
My intention was to use those for the public, not back at you. So
Right.
just
No, it didn't feel like a back at me. I mean, it was a good back at me, and I'm glad to know that all that time I spent working on those words, at least, like I said, they did come back, so that's good. The other thing I really did appreciate having the 4 presenters, and I want to thank you for having that idea and bringing it forward. And it was fascinating to have the Community Academy members, the graduates, say, actually, finance was our favorite part. And it shocked all of us in a sense, but they really did feel that you gave really good presentations and really helped them understand things about our city finances that most people don't. I think often lost. Maybe 10 plus years ago in a previous council, there was a lot of talk about transparency, and they did some good work to put the checkbook online and frankly, all the salaries, everything's on there and very transparent, but we don't often talk about those transparency things as much as I think we used to. So I'm glad that they recognize that, and I hope they move out in the community and share those good words. I also just want to point out, Emily Frontera, sorry, Emily, but I feel like you were single-handedly responsible for handing out all of our single-serve recycling bins in 2016. That was your big project back then. So that's Emily's claim to fame in my book from an early time. So thank you for all the work you're doing now, but that one especially, I remember, was a big project. So I just want to point that out for those that don't know that about Emily. But this is all great news, and I appreciate all the work that you and the team did and that Alan did, and he asked tough questions as an auditor, I know, and I can speak for that personally. But I feel like we're in a good shape to go into the next few months, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have no carryover items this evening, but we do have 2 public hearings. E1 is transfer of Community Development Block Grant CDBG program year 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 funds to a new project at Bolin Park. It seems dark in here. Maybe it's called the screens are off. The screen's coming back on, or? Okay, well, there we go. Sorry,
brighten things up.
Caught me off, yeah. Kurt Bovensieber, our Public Works Director, will present E1.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As Kyle mentioned, the Community Block Grant Fund, CDBG, is are funds from the federal government that are administered through HUD. We are not a direct recipient of these funds. We actually go through the Oakland County to receive these funding. So what that means is we're going to Oakland County with proposed projects for these funds, and they have to accept it, and then they take it to HUD. So as Mayor, you announced that we're working 7 years ago, 2018, and to current. So we've been trying to find a project home for these funds for quite some time, and I think we've had some promising projects in the past, and for whatever reason, they've been denied by HUD or by the county. But I'm very excited because this is one of my passions to propose moving these funds to removing architectural barriers and rebuilding the Bolin play structure for an all-inclusive play structure for anybody regardless of their abilities, to be able to play together. We're hopeful that we'll also have some funding available to take a portion of that restroom and make it into an inclusive restroom, so those participants have a place to go comfortably to the restroom. So we're excited. County is on board. Again, we struggled with this actually developing a park, if you remember, at Daniels in Long Lake. There was some noise issues over there, so we weren't able to move forward. However, we did convince, however you want to look at it, that removing the architectural barriers at Bolin Park is a qualified expenditure for these funds. I think there might be some people in the audience to talk about this topic tonight, and I do want to say that able-bodied people should not be the ones designing this park. It should be people that are going to be using this park, and we plan on partnering with the Arc of Oakland County to actually design and develop this park.
Thank you. Any questions for Kurt? All right, with that said, I'll open the public hearing then. Don, I see you're signed up for E2. Do you want to speak on this one as well? It's the same concept. You're welcome to come forward. Don Calman.
Thank you. I think I signed up for the wrong one. So thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor, Baker, City Council members, and community members. My name is Dawn Kalman, and I am proud to say that I was born and raised in the city of Troy. I just realized the city was 16 years old when I was born. Do the math. After a brief stint living in a neighboring city, I was fortunate to be able to move back and continue to raise my boys in the city of Troy. Troy is and always will be the place we call home. I am here today as the executive director of the ARC of Oakland County. We are a nonprofit whose office is here in Troy. Since 1967, we have been helping children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We help them to find resources and navigate the systems of supports they need so that they can live their very best lives. We believe that regardless of ability, every citizen in this great community should be able to live, work, and play in the community of their choice, along with their peers. I am here tonight to extend a heartfelt thank you to the City of Troy for your plans to utilize CDBG funds to create an accessible and inclusive space and playground. I appreciate the Troy City leaders that you consider the needs of all of your citizens when you are creating new spaces. I want to tell you a brief story about how that consideration impacts people. I was recently walking at Bolin Park with another nonprofit leader. I was bragging about your plans to create the inclusive playground, and she told me that her son, who has cerebral palsy, played on a swing for his very first time when he was 7 years old. That swing was an accessible and safe swing that supported him. She said he lit up with joy and laughter as she pushed him high into the air. That swing was at Bolin Park in Troy, Michigan. The city's continued commitment to inclusivity and accessibility for all residents is seen and valued. You are doing so much more than creating an accessible and inclusive playground. You're helping foster a more compassionate and understanding community, a place where everyone belongs. The ARC of Oakland County is proud to be a part of this community, and we look forward to continued collaboration to help make this space amazing and to make our community a better place for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn. I don't see that anybody else has signed up to speak on E1, but that doesn't prohibit you from doing so. If anyone would like to speak on this item, they may do so now. All right, with that said, we'll close the public hearing and see if anyone at the table would like to move the resolution for discussion. Councilmember Chamberlain-Crankle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move E1, Transfer of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Program Year 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 funds to a new park at Bolin Park.
Support.
It's printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
All right, moved by Councilmember Chamberlain-Crankle, supported by Councilmember Gunn, that we approve E1, Transfer of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Program Year 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 funds to a new project at Bolin Park as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? It's a great project. Happy to see it moving forward. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crankle?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Kurt. Next up is E2, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2025 funds, and that'll be introduced by Cindy Stewart, our Community Affairs Director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's always my pleasure to come to you every year as we want to be a recipient of the 2025 fund. You might ask, what about the 2024? We cannot do anything with them, but we're probably going to transfer them to that project after we receive them, which should be by the end of the year. But the county gave us the amount of $182,205 to work with for 2025. We would like to propose $127,543.50 will go to Bolin Park inclusive playground. And then we will use the $54,661.50 for our yard services program that you know we do lawn mowing and snow shoveling for our seniors who are low income. So we ask that if you would approve that, I can finish the application process and get it to Oakland County by the deadline in December.
Thank you. Any questions for Cindy? All right, I will open the public hearing. I don't see anyone signed up for this item. Again, doesn't preclude you from speaking if you'd like to say anything. All right, we'll close the public hearing and ask if anyone would like to move the resolution. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move E2, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2025 funds as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Brooks, supported by Councilmember Chanda, that we approve E2 Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2025 funds as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? I'll only say that I know that Cindy's always looking for volunteers to help with the leaves and the project's done, so reach out if you know anybody that would like to do some work. Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. That concludes public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I see 4 people have signed up. Same rules as always. The 4 of you have been here before, so you know the rules, but 3 minutes only. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when the light turns red, please stop. Again, it's addressed to all of us as a body. It's not a back and forth question and answer period. And with that, we'll call up Linda Bellion.
Good evening. I'm Linda Bellion, a 28-year resident of Troy. Tonight you face the most important responsibility you have as Troy elected officials, the hiring of our new city manager, a new CEO to run the city on a daily basis. I went to the meet and greet to meet the candidates, and I spoke with all of them. I watched all of the interviews with great interest, and I have some opinions, of course, but ultimately this is your decision. We voted all of you into office. We trust you to make the best decisions for the city of Troy. So as you make your choice tonight, please consider that we're at a crossroads in the city. We have real issues that are going to take real money to fix. Deferred maintenance and aging buildings have left us in a precarious position. We need a CEO that has interest in growing and, yes, regrowing our city. We need someone that can work well with our excellent CFO and help secure funding for necessary projects. We need someone that can build consensus and help steer large projects to completion. Of course, one of the most urgent projects in my mind is the library. And we all know what's going on there this week. The power failure shutting down for over 3 days is now truly impacting the public in a way that it hasn't before. And we're currently running out of generator, an emergency generator. We don't know for how long. We don't know how long it's going to take to fix, and we don't know how much money it's going to cost. And again, this is money being sucked away from the library budget. The persistent, incessant, unending problems facing that aging building. With utility cables into the library failing, it proves to me that a renovation of the library just isn't feasible. There's been a lot of talk about a renovation, but at this point, to do all of the needed infrastructure, it's going to cost more money to renovate than to start from scratch. Maybe 10 years ago it was an option. It's not today. This snowball started rolling downhill years ago, and it's become an avalanche. There's no stopping it. Nobody knows its path. Today it's the power. Tomorrow what? The sewer? The plumbing? I'm almost afraid to say any of this. We don't know what's next, but we know something's coming. It always is. So time is truly of the essence. So this means that our new city manager needs to be smart and have excellent leadership qualities. We need to be bold. We need creative ideas and solutions. We need someone good with presenting the facts to the public to help them understand and get on board. This is Troy. There are no easy sells when it comes to taxes. That's why tonight's hire is so important. You have a difficult decision to make. So good luck, and thank you for all that you do for the city.
Thank you, Linda. Next up is April Church.
Three weeks past my new knee. So, and I'm here. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm here tonight to comment on the city financial audit. I'm the president of the Friends of the Troy Public Library, and I was reading through the audit presentation because right now I have that kind of time. And one thing really stood out in my mind, that the library currently has a fund balance of slightly over $3.5 million. This fund balance is the opportunity to have some of the costs of the new building already in hand. Unfortunately, a continuous run of expensive building malfunctions forces the library to dip into that balance just to keep the current library operation going. Currently, the library is literally on life support. Last Wednesday, the library experienced a power outage and closed the building for 3 days. This past weekend, the library was able to use generators to power the building so that the citizens were able to use the library. The problem is that the 40-plus-year-old power cables to the library failed. The repair, which will be costly, will have to come from that fund balance. And that's life. And that's a shame. We all understand we have to do what we have to do to provide the services the citizens of Troy want on a daily basis. It's just frustrating and it's frightening. What's next? What component of the library's infrastructure will fail next? It's not an if proposition, it's a when proposition. And like the current problem, we won't get any early warning. If you want to look for a silver lining to all of this, there is a slight one that I found. If there's anyone on the council or public who believe that a renovation is the way to go, this crisis, in my opinion, pretty much eliminated that option. The cost of replacing all the infrastructure and doing a renovation on the current building will far exceed the cost of replacing the building, which would include new infrastructure. I know that all of you are highly supportive of moving forward with a new library that we can all be proud of. I am not here to beat up on you. I am appreciative of all the hard work you are doing to make this happen. My coming here time after time in no way reflects any displeasure or disappointment in the efforts you are doing to bring about changes in the library. This is one of the few opportunities I have a chance to talk to you and to educate the public about the problems our library is facing, and it's cost-free. I will continue to come here in preparation to support whatever you decide to do to fund this important project. All I can do right now is provide evidence to the public that the library is indeed in crisis, and the most effective solution to the crisis is to act now. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for listening to me month after month. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Next up is Michelle Paulus.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Paulus, over 30 years in Troy. I've loved to see you guys here. I'm glad I'm back. We're here once again to talk about hiring a manager for the city. Seems like a repeat. If you read my email, you already know that I am supporting Mr. Stevens as the most qualified and the best fit candidate, and I won't go into all the details about that. And I trust that you're going to make the right decision. I really do. But I am here to remind you that our past hiring practices didn't always turn out so good. I'm just hoping that we can avoid hiring someone who's going to end up in jail or somebody who is going to retire in 2 years or is unable to come to terms on the employment agreement. Please, let's get done with this. I'm getting too old for this. I know you love the city and you want to do what's best. The decision's a big deal. This is a really big deal. It is, for some of you, possibly your legacy decision. It's how you're going to leave the city when you step down. So I beg you, please do not take the easy and comfortable decision, but take the bold and the decision that is courageous. And I heard other people talking about that as well. So my dear friends, all of you, like I said, I'm getting too old. I'm starting to get tired. I'm borderline cranky about this, and I'm blind in one eye now. So I can still see, and all of you can see as well. Let's give Mr. Stevens the chance he deserves. And I'm going to ask you, like I've asked myself, if Mr. Stevens looked like the other candidates, would that influence my decision? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Fabrice Schmilovskis.
Hello. I work with a group of residents who interact with city staff on policy issues in Troy. I can and will work constructively with any of the three candidates being considered today. However, I believe Kalfani Stevens is by far the best choice. So first of all, Rob Malisic, Kalfani Stevens, and City Council are all on the same page that the most urgent priority for the city is revenue generation, and the process by which we would go about that is to first educate and solicit the opinions of city residents in deciding how to move forward on that. I don't believe the other candidates gave as explicit and sort of consistent statement as that. Second, Troy is punching below its weight in the county, deserves more recognition and respect. The county government seat is moving to Pontiac, and Kalfani Stevens is the point person for that. He also has the presence and the connections around the county to really improve our external relations in a way that we don't have right now, and that the other two candidates can't match. Third, as much as city staff I know are great people, great employees, I enjoy them very much, they're not a diverse group. They do not represent the diversity of city residents. I think the staff themselves would acknowledge that. The same is true of our police force under the leadership of Chief Nastasi over the past 6 years. Stevens, through his own example and through his talent in managing staff to their potential and creating upward mobility for them, will inspire more people and people of color to come to work for Troy. Now about Chief Nastasi, while he's a talented communicator, a few things need to be said. First of all, he's eligible to retire right now with full benefits and will likely maintain that right through contract negotiations. How do we know that he won't retire in a year? And then we'll have to go through this whole process again. More time, more resources spent to find another city manager. No risk of that with the other candidates. Now, second, let's look at the insider advantage that Mr. Nastasi gained through the search process to gain this coveted and well-paid job. You may quote city staff praising him while not acknowledging the opinions of Pontiac and Huntington Woods staff just because you don't know them as well. This does not happen in other cities like Royal Oak and Berkeley, which recently hired outsiders through their city manager searches. Instead, we seem to continuously favor hometown boys, both in the April search and perhaps in this one as well. Now, when he was appointed as temporary city manager, we did not hear about Frank Nastasi's qualifications for the position. There was no suggestion by council that he would be considered as permanent city manager. And a couple weeks later, when Captain Jones was appointed as acting police chief, you joked that he wouldn't screw up the PD in the next 3 months. And we all laughed along with him. But then less than a month later, Nastasi was announced as, surprise, surprise, a finalist for the permanent position.
Thank you, Fabrice. That concludes your 3 minutes. That is all that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have an opportunity for council or administration to respond or reply. I'm actually going to ask city management first if there's any potential update on the library power issue that would be worth sharing for the public at this point. I don't want to put anyone on the spot.
No, I would like to call up Kurt, our Public Works Director. He's been working on it hand in hand, and he'll have the most accurate information at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Nastasi, Mayor, City Council. So the line that went down, there's 3 phases of power that goes to the library. We lost one of those phases. This is not something that can be predicted. Normally, lines last longer. We're estimating that this line was probably put in somewhere around 1984 or shortly thereafter with the addition. These lines can't be predicted. Their failure cannot be predicted. So we were a little caught off guard when it happened. However, I think we responded rather quickly. We had a generator on site. We had temporary power back on. One of the issues with this particular power issue is we own the primary line that's feeding the library. DTE power comes into City Hall, and then it's switched out to City Hall, PD, court, and library. We own all of those primary electrical lines to those different buildings. We attempted with our contractor, Shaw Electric, to actually pull that line back to reuse the conduit. We were unsuccessful. We had a crane on site. We were pulling very hard. We were unsuccessful. So we started looking at other options. We looked at what is our closest other transformer that we can tap power off of. What can DT help? DT was really unhelpful because it's not their line. It's not their responsibility. So we decided that the best option was to go up and grab the Troy Days transformer that could power the library. That transformer is only used 5-6 days out of the year and could actually do both the festival and the library at the time. DTE took a little bit of issue with that. DTE required us to go through their planning process, was a little uncooperative in expediting this, and said it was 1 to 2 months to get a commercial meter to actually do that option. Other option was to look at the overhead lines to feed the library. The overhead lines, DTE said that's a 4 to 6 month process to actually go through that planning process to get power through the overhead lines. We are back to the original option of reusing that conduit. So beginning actually this afternoon, we actually were exposing that conduit, cutting that line, trying to pull in different directions and different locations and shortening that footage that we need to pull back. We're pretty confident by this we're going to be able to do it. It's just going to take a little bit more time because we have to expose that conduit, cut the line. Once it's all removed, we'll pull a line through, and we'll pull new wire through. Shaw Electric has the wire on order. We'll get that very quickly. And we're hopeful that mid to late next week, we'll have the library back on DTE power using that existing route from the transformer feeding the entire complex. Ideally, this is not how we would, if we go down the road of building a new library, this is not how we would do this. We would not have a separate ownership of a primary line. This would all be DTE because they can respond and they have a lot more resources when it's actually their line. So we would definitely look at doing things differently. But currently the library is on generator power. The generator is more than sufficient to run the library, and we're confident that we're there daily checking the fuel, checking all the diagnostics on that generator. So we're confident that the generator will run the library until we're able to connect back up to DTE power.
Any questions for Kurt on that? He was pretty thorough. Councilmember Chanda?
Out of curiosity, I think you mentioned that it's also distributed to the city hall, right? So is it potentially the same failure could happen to the city hall too?
Potentially, yes. Yes, the furthest run would be the court, but the furthest out of all the runs were the library. The library is a 620-foot run from the switchgear to the library, and that is the longest run out of that switchgear.
I'll just say thank you, City Manager and Kurt. Thank you for the information. You can imagine we've all gotten a lot of texts and calls from people, so the getting up to date information has been very helpful. So thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to propose to seek consensus if we have any other reply regarding the other speakers, or I guess we could, if anyone would like to speak on any library issues, please, but regarding the city manager, it makes more sense, I think, to speak during discussion when we talk of that. Is that fair? Any additional library comments? Councilmember Hamilton?
Yeah, I'll just stand by what I've said for years, that we need a new library, and this is just another clear example of it, so let's go. Let's get it done.
Okay. Good. All right. That concludes City Council, City Administration response and reply to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments and no city council appointments this evening. I-2 is board and committee nominations. I won't make any mayoral nominations this evening. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, I assume you have no city council nominations. I lost my, there we go, sorry. There's no closed session requested this evening, so we move on to I-4, adoption of the proposed 2024-25 city council rules of procedure. That'll be introduced by our city clerk, Aileen Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight before you, the City Council Rules of Procedure simply contain the update to the rotation for Mayor Pro Tem. There were no other changes requested by Council or provided by City Management. So if you have any questions, I can answer that. Otherwise, like I said, it's just the Mayor Pro Tem rotation.
Any questions? Anyone want to move I-4? Councilmember Hamilton?
I'll move I-4, adoption of the proposed 2024-2025 City Council Rules of Procedure as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig, that we approve I-4, adoption of the proposed 2024 to 2025 City Council Rules of Procedure as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I-5, election and oath of office for Mayor Pro Tem. I'll turn it back over to City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item is simply to appoint the next Mayor Pro Tem in the order according to the rules, which would be Councilmember Gunn. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, do you want to move this one?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, election and oath of office for Mayor Pro Tem, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Chanda, that we approve I-5, election and oath of office for Mayor Pro Tem as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kringa?
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, we'll swear in Mayor Pro Tem Gunn. Step down.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the Charter of the City of Troy, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Mayor Pro Tem in and for the City of Troy, County of Oakland, State of Michigan, according to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
Congratulations. All right, with that, we're going to take a 5-minute recess so the nameplate can be changed, and we'll be back. right, we will go back on the record. Next up is I6, appointment of city manager. I'll turn it over to City Attorney Bloom to start things out.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I have been happy to serve as a facilitator of the city manager search process, but I'm even happier to defer to outside experts as well. One of the experts is going to be James Vetrano. He is the search consultant. The second expert is going to be our outside labor counsel, Stacy Belisle, who would be responsible for negotiating any agreement. But James Vetrano is here and is happy to address you and give you a little bit of the update of the procedure.
Thank you. Hi, James.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to give just a quick update or just provide for the public the process that you followed that culminates this evening. On October 1st, that was the deadline for this round of applications for city manager. We had received 88 applications, which were reviewed by GovHR. We had a closed session with this body on October 21st, as allowed by the Open Meetings Act, to review the resumes of those individuals, and 4 candidates were selected to be interviewed, one of which removed themselves from consideration. On November 15th, we had all 3 candidates participate in a number of activities at the city, including a tour of the city facilities, a 45-minute roundtable with your department heads, a 60-minute meet and greet with the public, and a 60-minute meet and greet with the employees of the city. Feedback was received from each of those sessions, which was distributed to city council members the next day on November 16th, which was also the day when you interviewed all 3 candidates. Those interviews were cablecast live as well as recorded and replayed for the residents of the city to watch. Feedback from from individuals in the city has been received by city council as well, directly after them watching the interviews. That brings us to today. This evening you have before you an opportunity to select your most preferred candidate. If you select a most preferred candidate this evening, as was suggested by your city attorney, I would hopefully quickly facilitate a contract that would be acceptable to that individual. Then that contract is what would actually come before you at a future meeting as employment for that individual. So just for clarity for the public and for you this evening, you're selecting a preferred candidate with a later contract to make them your city manager. I just want to have a reminder, I know I've said this before in front of this group and you've always done really, really well. This is obviously a public process and that's never comfortable for the candidates nor you sometimes to have employment discussed in public on television. All 3 individuals you have in front of you are professionals and they're public professionals in your community or another community. So I would urge you to focus on the qualities that you like in the candidates or the reasons you might want a specific candidate to be your next city manager. Certainly you may have to identify qualities that are lacking from a candidate, but I do ask that you do that with all due respect and do as much as you can to focus on the candidates you do desire and the qualities they have. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have about the process or what's before you this evening.
Thank you, James. Any questions about process? Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're in a little bit of a Robert's Rules pickle. The only way we can have a discussion and deliberation is to have a motion on the table. I looked at previous meetings where we had a motion to deliberate on the table. We do not have that here for different circumstances. So I am going to make a resolution resolved that Troy City Council hereby appoints Frank Nastasi as city manager contingent upon the approval of an employment agreement negotiated between the appointed candidate and McGraw-Morris, the city's outside labor and employment counsel. The employment agreement shall include the starting date and compensation and shall be presented to the Troy City Council at a future city council meeting.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I6, appointment of a city manager, as read into the record with Frank Nastasi as the appointment. As an opportunity for discussion, which is what I think is warranted here. I feel like I should go first because I made the motion. I also feel like there's going to be more I want to say after some of the others may speak a little bit, but I will start things off. This is my 10th year on city council in some form or another, and I've had the opportunity, as have a couple others up here, to work with the past couple city managers Certainly our Councilmember Hoderick has served the longest up here and has more experience with all of them, but there have been ups and downs through city management, and for anyone who has maybe emailed or thought that we don't take this seriously, this is the most serious decision we make as a body, and it's the second time we've made it this year. So we do greatly know the importance of it and how our community is involved. Ironically, I did some research, and I'm a little bit surprised by the amount of interest in this particular appointment this evening. Nobody showed up when we appointed Mark Miller after Brian Kishnick was fired. We got a couple emails about it. He was a felon or a potential felon at that point, and yet we didn't have the kind of community response that we have now when things are, admittedly by most of the people who have provided public comment and emails, when things are going well. I appreciate the fact that we have had robust community engagement on this issue. More emails than I expected, and honestly, more emails spread across different groups and different, maybe factions, I guess, for all of the candidates in one way or another. But at the end of the day, I spoke up here about 7 months ago talking about the importance of having a city manager that does well with the employees, which I think there's no question that Mr. Nastasi has succeeded at, whether in the police department or in his time as city manager here. And the overwhelming response from our employees was supportive of Mr. Nastasi. And you can talk about maybe biases related to that or why that would be, but at the end of the day, that's extremely important to me and who I want to pick as the next city manager, especially in light of the history of this city and what I've experienced from this table. There's the importance of a city manager dealing with the community. There's no denying Mr. Nastasi's ease with the community, his ability to talk to members of our community that are different than him, that are the same as him, that are angry at him, that are kind to him. He's witnessed it all in the police department, and he's witnessed it all here in 2 months as city manager. And he's handled it gracefully and with ease and with a care that I haven't seen in a city manager in all of the time I've been up here. The third component, as a reminder, is how that city manager or that person will get along with us. And I feel comfortable saying tonight that more has been done in the past 2 months in response to what City Council has asked and the needs we face than was in the 5 years prior. And I am excited that we are at a place now where I think the issues that are facing our city can be addressed in a timely fashion, in an ethical fashion, and in a responsive fashion to what the policy-setting body up here is pushing for. Some of you may not know that there's been times when we've unanimously given direction to do something to a previous city manager or management team, and it wasn't done. I don't believe that'll happen with Mr. Nastasi. I believe, based on his experience and his understanding of our city and his familiarity with this council manager form of government, he wouldn't dare let that happen. I am painfully aware that a public interview process for other candidates is potentially very painful. Just to have yourself talked about in front of a group of people can be difficult. And I'm also aware that Mr. Stevens is here, and I appreciate him coming to be part of this process. And I said when we left City Hall on the 15th, I would love to find a place for all three of the people we interviewed in our organization, because all three of them brought something very unique to this city and could bring something very unique to this city. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for some, we can only appoint 2 people. We can only hire a city manager or a city attorney, so we leave it to the others to make those other decisions. Some emails brought up things that I was a little surprised to see, whether that was related to potential biases. nepotism, backroom deals, all of the typical things that come up to try to scare people into voting a certain way. And as much as they affected me, because they did, each one that I read, I knew that we're on the right side of things here, and we're not choosing somebody or not choosing somebody because of how they look. We're not making backroom deals. We're not picking our best friend, which someone said. We're picking somebody who's going to do the best job as city manager for the city of Troy. And that's why I'm supportive of Frank Nastasi in that role. And I'm encouraged by the amount of support he already has in the organization and throughout the community. So I'll leave my comments at that for now and turn it over to anybody else. Councilmember Hoderick.
I'm entering my 12th year on City Council, done the rotation twice now through Mayor Pro Tem, found footage of myself speaking at the public microphone in 2002 as a business leader in the city, talking about the Civic Center and its future plans. I've worked for the city. I've been an employee. I still view myself as a fellow employee in many respects. There's some folks that have more recent history with the city that wonder at decisions of internal versus external. I've seen both types of decisions here. There is often a sense of, we can find an outside unicorn candidate that's going to bring something special sauce that we just don't have internally, and that's the way to go, which is why we do a search. And I'll tell you, we did just meet 2 very outstanding external candidates. There's also a sense sometimes in the community that it's very important to community members that we do recognize internal people. And embrace the understanding and the history they have with the city. So I've seen all of that. I'm ready to get this decision right myself, and there is a sense of urgency here. With that, I came in with a very open mind to the interviews and was absolutely blown away and impressed by all 3 candidates. I feel that we as a community are blessed to have these 3 professionals to consider. When Mr. Nastasi raised his hand to help us out in a pinch when we needed an acting city manager, that came as a surprise to me, and frankly, I was concerned. I was concerned because I didn't want to pull him away from our public safety. He's an outstanding chief in our department. I've seen our police department deal with lean command situations, and I didn't want to foist that situation on our PD. But he stepped in. Similarly, when we came to the resumes that were before us in what is legally allowed closed-door session where we review the resumes, when that was brought to us, I was surprised to see that he would be interested in serving in the role permanently. There was I had no conversation or insight of that before. The other 2 external candidates, one of them we had interviewed a previous time when we were interviewing, and I absolutely love him and respect him. He's outstanding. Another I've tripped on in my travels around the region, had met him, and he came in and blew me away. One was impressive in an almost philosophical, creative approach, appealed to the cerebral side of my brain during his interview with a fresh perspective of storytelling, and it definitely had an appeal. Another had a common sense, straightforward approach in his responses, combined with a little bit more familiarity with Troy itself, if I'm being candid, and it made him also a very compelling candidate to me. Another is definitely the most familiar with the city, bringing to the interview a sincere desire to bring a longstanding public servant experience here in a new role. Many fellow residents who watched were very impressed with these candidates, and many I've spoken to have said to me, council knows best, the candidate best for the role right now, and I trust you all with the decision. Okay, so it's time to zoom out. I've talked to friends that work in HR. They reminded me to take the 30,000-foot view, and I went back to the original challenges and opportunities our consultant helped us identify, which are public, that we laid out to all the interested applicants. And this, to me, is essential to our decision-making, and is why I'm pointed in the direction of Frank Nastasi. As I hold this paper, a sign of how important this is, I'm shaking. These are important decisions, and it's three professionals who I very much care about their professions and their professional life. But you've heard the phrase, I think, maybe 4 or 5 times already now tonight. Councilwoman Brooks hit at it, sense of urgency. That's not on this list, but it's between the lines because all of these topics are urgent, and the descriptions within them, there's a sense of urgency. And so what I saw with Mr. Nastasi, both in his interview and honestly during the weeks that he has served as acting city manager, he has clearly demonstrated to me not only his understanding of the challenges and opportunities, but also a shared sense of urgency for the work at hand. I've said this before from the table, and it bears repeating. We have lost time due to circumstances beyond our control for stepping up to get some things done here. Frank has been observing that, has been involved for some years. He clearly gets it and is already acting accordingly. Using the feedback from the residents as a touchstone, it is heartening for me to see support come in for all 3 of the candidates, all for very good reason. Of note, there is a diverse, wide swath of the community expressing a preference for Frank, valuing his knowledge and familiarity about our residents, businesses, faith institutions, and schools. An additional absolutely critical touchstone is the feedback from our employees. Many do know the other 2 candidates and have great respect for them, but they're looking for the stability and focus that a continuation with Frank will bring. Important to me is the understanding he will bring to our EMS challenges and his experience with multi-jurisdictional task forces, his experience working with fellow communities, the county, the state, and the federal level to serve our residents. Finally, there is a quality I see in Frank that is critical to the tasks at hand. And yes, I have been surveilling you. Watching his interactions with members of the public, how he interacted at a recent SACMA dinner, the South Oakland County Mayors Association dinner. His ability to communicate with members of the public, he listens to understand and truly empathizes with people. He's not a glad-handing, extroverted type of people person. And frankly, I would be guarded about that if it was the case. But he has this authentic, sincere ability to connect with people. He's community and people-focused. For those just watching the interviews and maybe at an interaction on a Friday afternoon, you wouldn't have a chance to see that as much. And I wanted to assure you that I have been looking out for that. His years rising through the ranks in the police department and observing the city council advances, regular and special meetings make absolutely true an observation he made during his interview. He knows this city's DNA. As outstanding as the other 2 candidates are, and man alive, they're each outstanding in their own way, That is the special ingredient that set Frank apart for me. To my fellow stakeholders in the community, he gets us. With that deep understanding, coming over to the City Hall side of things, he brings an informed yet fresh eye and a get-her-done approach we really, really need right now. Time is of the essence on a number of things we need to do. And for that reason, that's why I would be supporting Mr. Nastasi. I will also say, I welcome my colleagues' perspectives. I value your experiences. You have the mayor and the person who was just mayor pro tem. I'm not trying to, as I make my case for why I'm choosing this candidate, if there are others who feel differently, I want to hear your cases, and we should deliberate and discuss that openly with the public. I'm in no way trying to coerce my colleagues. These are my heartfelt reasons for this candidate, and I welcome yours as we continue this discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranger.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Hoderick, for sharing your, I wanted to call you Mayor Pro Tem, but you're now Councilmember Hoderick. We have all these formalities. I'm just going to try to speak from the heart. So I've served on council for almost 5 years and probably have made hundreds of decisions almost, if you look at all of them. And this is no doubt the hardest decision that I have had to make. And one reason is relationships. Since I've served on council, I've known Frank Nastasi, who recently, as our head chief of police. You and your department has always welcomed my family as we stop by with donuts and cookies for Christmas, and that means something. Kelfani Stevens is someone who, sitting in the back, I serve with on the Board of Trustees of the Michigan Municipal League, basically the most powerful entity representing cities in the state of Michigan. Kelfani's brilliant. When he speaks, people listen. It has been an honor and joy to spend time and get to know Kelfani. And if there's any person that I've really connected with over time, it has been Kelfani. Someone who just enjoy hanging out with and hearing him speak French and all of his languages. If I step back though from relationships, and I just want to share, this is my journey and my decision-making process around this. If I go back to those actual interviews, from a very technical perspective, I have to say Chris Wilson, he impressed me. On a number of my questions, the one person who really answered the question that I was trying to, in the way that I was sort of imagining, was Chris Wilson. He does have decades of experience in that role. And I appreciate that technical background. I appreciate that he knows Troy. His wife is a teacher here. But I also have to pan out, as we talked about, you have to pan out and think of both contexts. What are the most pressing challenges that we're facing as a city? And also the input of our staff, because this is the most direct person who is going to engage our staff. When it comes to context, we heard it tonight. We didn't go into detail, but if you've been looking at our agendas, our next big issue that we have to address is one of public safety. It is EMS services. It's been on the agenda, and we're going to speak more about it in December. It is the top issue that we have to address. And this is no fault of anyone's. Recognizing in Pontiac, this is before Mr. Stevens came to that role. It was during a time of emergency management that that decision was taken, that I know a lot of public safety, police and fire, it's been outsourced, and there's a different arrangement that's happening there. And again, that has nothing to do with, that was a decision taken before your time there. And that's something I wasn't aware of. That was feedback that came through this process. And it's something to bear in mind as we have to tackle some public safety issues and recognizing the experience that is needed. And I recognize that Frank does have that experience when it comes to tackling some of those public safety issues we have to address. Going to staff input, I would not be doing our staff justice if I did not listen to that feedback that has come, and this is different, I'll be honest, from the previous decision we made with 2 candidates. In this case, staff are unanimous in their feedback of that they've enjoyed working with Frank. And even just these number of items that we're moving forward, we mentioned by CFO Malzik around the architectural study, the needs list, millage rate information, that stuff is already moving forward. And we are a board of directors. If the majority of our staff said one thing, again, I would not be doing right by staff. One staff member who reached out, this was not confidential, but reached out to me, had said that not 100%, but 1 billion% they support Frank Nastasi. I just have to ask, like, I can't say no to that. If that is the feedback, and these are people I respect, and these are people that are working with leadership. And so I think just it's this confluence of factors that the right man at the right time for the right job to tackle what we have to tackle is, I believe it's Frank. So that's why I'll be supporting Frank, as hard as that is.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga. Mayor Pro Tem Gutt.
Well, I will say that over the year, I have watched a lot of citizens come into this chamber with very unique and very diverse issues that, myself, I like solving problems and I like to stay on top of them. And it's been difficult to watch previously that these things weren't being resolved. So when I had the opportunity to meet Frank and to work with him, I brought, and I'm sure all of City Council have citizens bring us issues, and I have a lady that brought me an issue over and over and over and over and over for the past year. And I thought, okay, let's see how good Frank is. So I brought him this issue, and it was resolved within 3 days. And this poor lady has been dealing with this issue for 12 years. And I was like, okay, we got a leader here. And we have met these other candidates, and they are very impressive, and they're very qualified. But, I was in talking with different citizens. One of them said to me, Mark, when you run for office and when other people run for office, what's one of the first things that you guys list on your campaign literature? How many years you have been involved in the community to show and demonstrate that we're invested. And I thought about it, I thought, okay, you know what? And with Frank having led the police department for so many years, and as a leader, that police department has shined throughout this state for many years. And he has been involved with the police department, been 28 years, I think it is. So it started to push me into that direction that, this would be the right person at this time. Again, not to take anything away from the other candidates, that they're very qualified, but I do think that at this point in time, we need somebody who understands these issues, who's already moving forward on many of them, and I think we're going to finally see, not finally, but I mean in the last few years, we're going to see some solutions to some of the problems that the people bring forward. And that would make, I think, a lot of people happy. So for that reason, I would be supporting Frank.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gunn. Councilmember Chanda.
Thank you, Mayor. So as was mentioned, making a decision on the city manager is probably the most important thing that you do as a council member or a mayor. And my luck, I've been doing the second time in 1 year here. Take this very seriously, like all of our council colleagues. So we were really fortunate to have 3 very qualified candidates, 2 external and 1 internal, Frank Nastasi. And, went through the resume, went through the interviews. They were all very qualified. I just briefly want to mention Chris Wilson, as Councilmember Chamberlain-Crainga said, actually impressed me in the interview quite a bit. He has root in the city. He appeared to be very comfortable with the interview process, probably because he's been a city council or city manager for a long time. So second was Mr. Kalfani Stephens. I was very impressed with his resume. He has done wonderful things in Pontiac and in Flint. Some of the challenges he faced there are probably more than what we face in Troy. And I judge success by, not by what you achieve, but by the obstacles you overcome. And I'm sure you had to go through a lot of discussions, a lot of negotiation with Oakland County representatives. And what you achieved in Pontiac and in Flint is, really, really great. So I went back and forth, and I see the challenges we are facing in the city are similar, but little different. And I wanted to see if we can have an external candidate, because I always get inspired by a quote from Henry Leland, a founder of Cadillac, that let good and great not be the enemy of possible. And in Mr. Kalfani Stephens, I find that the possibilities that may exist that we are missing out as while we're looking inward. Are we finding comfort in the known good and great and missing out what is there possible? Maybe. But at the same time, I'm looking at what do we need today? We have a lot of pressing needs that the city is facing, including the library, the EMS. And Frank impressed me tremendously. I met him as a new council member back in February when he was the police chief. And I found in his voice the sincerity that, you at that moment you realize that he's there for real. He is honest. What he thinks about the city, he really cares about the city. And that's something that's very important. He knows the city, he knows the needs of the city, what is coming up. He's already doing a real good job as a short-term city manager. We met one-on-one. We feel the passion in his voice to do something good for the city. And we all share, all 7 of us share that same, that Troy is our home, and he thinks that way. So I think at this point, we do need somebody who can jump in and take helm of things without delay. And for that reason, I'll also be supporting Mr. Nastasi for this position.
Thank you, Councilmember Chanda. Councilmember Brooks.
Mayor. Okay, so first, I would like to say that we are so fortunate to have 3 amazing candidates that applied for this position. I believe that our city is extremely lucky to have any one of them. They are all qualified in their own right, and they all demonstrate integrity and are true public servants. When you look at their life choices and the things that they have, their careers over time have demonstrated they are true public servants. And as everyone has stated, I also took this decision very, very seriously, and I really went back and forth a lot because each of the candidates really had their own strengths and challenges. I was really impressed, as others said, by Chris Wilson. He is very familiar with the city manager form of government and definitely was able to demonstrate that during his interview. Also, I was impressed by the fact that, he does have roots in Troy, with his wife being in the Troy Public School District as a teacher, and also his children as well. I was also very, very impressed by Mr. Stevens. I think that he brings a unique sense of just a unique perspective. I believe he's very thoughtful, he's very intellectual, and I really appreciated that approach as well. I also appreciated his connections and kind of where he stands with multiple levels of government, with the county, what he's done in Pontiac, Flint, all of that. And I do think that that would bring something very unique to our city as well. So I did go back and forth. But however, with that being said, I do make decisions very holistically. So I look at everything as a whole and kind of look at the benefits, look at the drawbacks, and kind of balance it out. And when I really did that and looked at from a different perspective, very holistically, I did come to the conclusion that I do feel that Mr. Nastasi is the best choice at this time. My experience and my relationship with Mr. Nastasi goes back to when I was considering a run for this seat. And I was a little nervous, actually, to sit down with the police chief. I've never really had any sort of, real communications with police chiefs. And I was really impressed by just how personable he is and how relatable he is. And he doesn't talk down at you. He really talks to you and talks to you like you're on the equal footing. And I wasn't even, in city council at that time. I was just, a resident. And he was very, very respectful. And I really appreciated that. And through my years, being on council, I have grown to really trust Mr. Nastasi for various reasons. There are just numerous things that have happened that really, I really do trust him. And when he first stepped into this role, I was like, oh, I don't know, I wasn't sure what to think. I was also concerned about maybe creating a vacuum in the police department. But I have been very impressed by working with him for these past couple of weeks, months. He definitely has an attitude that, he wants to get things done. And I believe that he will work with City Council to get things done. And knowing that we have so many things that we need to do, and these things needed to be done as of yesterday, I think it's really, really important that we have somebody who has really good rapport with city staff, our residents, and us as well. And he has demonstrated all of those things. Obviously, he has a strong understanding of public safety, which is extremely important in our city. But I also believe that he is very open-minded and very open to, looking at things in different ways. He has collaborated with other cities. He has collaborated with the county on various things with our public safety. And so I do believe that he is going to be the best person to step in and to get things done and carry out the kind of the direction that we want as City Council right away. So for that reason, I will also be supporting Mr. Nastasi.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you. I wrote notes, but a lot of it's been spoken. These are always monumental decisions for us. I remember when I was elected 7 years ago and jumping in with a criminal city manager, how much that can destroy a city. And we're still cleaning up, even now, 6 years later, 6.5 years later, we're still cleaning up some of the messes from that. And so I appreciate the gravity of this decision. That's why we've taken our time. That's why we've had to do this for 2 rounds. I mean, some people worry about that, but I think it's a sign that we take this thing seriously and that we didn't want to settle for what we didn't think was the right option. The number one thing in my 7 years that I've experienced and what you need in a city manager is leadership. And what leadership is to me is the ability to inspire people to come here, work here, bring out their talent to do good for their community, and to stay here and to grow and go out and come back as well. And so I looked at the 3 candidates, all very qualified. Honestly, for the people that brought their opinions in, I was a little surprised because I really thought all 3 options would be good options for the city and would be positive for the city. But I won't, I'm going to support Frank. It's a clear decision for me, and I won't repeat what a lot of other people said, and this isn't in my notes, but what I experienced with Frank is him standing up for what's right, even when it put his own self on the line, his own career on the line. to speak out and say what's right. I've experienced that firsthand. And when I experienced that, I knew that this person is worthy of our trust, and I hoped that he would step into an interim role if we needed it, and he did step up to that. And I, as Councilmember Hoderick said, was very surprised when he wanted to do the permanent position, but pleasantly surprised, because I knew of his impeccable integrity. What I didn't know is that when he jumped into the role for 2 months, how much stuff you would get done. As everyone else has said, it's remarkable. And I have a huge laundry list for you, but I've been saving it for whoever we do decide, because, you know, as I said, all 3 options I was considering, so I've kind of held back on that, so you're gonna really hate me soon, because I'm literally probably gonna email it to you tonight, so, as I said, Kalfani Stevens, Chris Wilson, excellent candidates. I have no doubt they will find what they're looking for as well. Love not either of them to come here as deputy, but I think they have greater aspirations, and I think they'll meet that for sure. But Frank is the right person for us to get done what we need to get done. We need to, beyond EMS, we still have a lot of issues in our public safety that we need resolved. We need to improve things for our firefighters. We need to keep hiring police officers. I mean, around the country, hiring police officers has been incredibly difficult. And a lot of communities similar to us have lost police officers. Since I've been elected, I think we're up 6 or 7 or 8 or something. We're hiring more, which is remarkable just to hold steady. To me, that shows the kind of people leader that you are, Frank, that you've been able to hold serve. And I'd like to look and see how we can grow our police department more, whether we need funding, whatever options we need to make that happen as well. But I really, a lot of what I wrote here is a lot of what Councilmember Chamberlain-Crang has said. And so I don't want to repeat that, but I strongly am happy you stepped up to this. Look forward to working together with you, and you have my full support.
Thank you. Yeah, if anyone's going to repeat, it's me. I understand. No, I'm not going to repeat anything. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and I think that I just, for the public, I mean, I hope you see a council taking this as serious as it is, and the gravity of the situation and the decision. And there's been shaking hands, emotional feelings. That was just me. But no, I mean, honestly, you can see the gravity of it in our faces and our bodies. This is not something that is easy for any of us to do from the perspective of, we know these are real lives of people who are these applicants. We know that it not only is affecting their personal careers potentially, but it also then has the effect of influencing the city, which is something we've all taken oaths to fully support and do our best at. I want to state that, you know, the hardest decisions we often make are the ones that are opposite to what our friends and political allies are supporting us or telling us to do. And I know that that's happened here this evening, or it's about to when we vote. But I hope those same people realize those are the bold and courageous decisions that are being made. It's the ones that are for the right of the city, even when it may not be comfortable back at a coffee shop or back in a group where you're meeting with your friends and allies in other ways. We are in a great position in this city, but we do have the challenges faced by the lack of action in some respects over the past few years, but also some of the financial concerns we've heard about. I've served with a city manager who took things way too far, took too many chances, was not a good leader, and ended up in prison. I've served with one that the pendulum swung back the other way to protect against that, where not enough got done, not enough forward progress was made. I'm now currently serving with one who I think has found the just right spot, who recognizes that there's both a conservative and progressive part of Troy, and is going to do what we as a body push and direct him to do. And like Linda, you said, you've all elected us to make these decisions, and you've put your faith and research and trust in us to do this. There's risk in that, I get it, but I hope that you know us well enough to know that we're making this decision for the good of our entire community and we all will benefit from it. I want to thank James also. He's worked with us all year on this, and I'm sure he's ready to work on another city for a little bit. But with that in mind, I'll ask for the vote for Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations, I think, Frank.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's kind words. I'm very honored. I'm a competitive person, and I thought when I met Chris Wilson and Kalfani Stevens, I like them, both of them, through the whole process. Just wonderful people, so don't envy the, decision-making process. It's something very difficult, but I do respect it, and I really appreciate it. I'm excited to continue in the position and move the city forward together as a team. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is I-7 2025 City Council meeting schedule. That'll be introduced by City Manager Frank Nastasi.
Good evening. So tonight I'm presenting the 2025 council meeting schedule. It was previously sent to everyone. We did our best to accommodate everyone's requests, taking into account, holidays, school breaks, and operational needs. So we have it for the regular meetings, special meetings for the budget, of course, and I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Nastasi? Chief Nastasi, that's funny. Frank? Someone like to move this resolution? Councilmember Hoderick.
I'll move I-7 2025 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig, that we approve I-7 2025 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. I would ask City Manager's office to have those calendar invites done and sent to us. Thank you. Next up, that concludes regular business. We move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Hamilton.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, all have been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items this evening, so we move on to public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I do see that one person is signed up. I will call on Greg O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, same rules as before, 3 minutes. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute, and when it's red, that's your time.
Okay, thank you. I'm a library volunteer and a member of the Friends of the Library, and I wanted to talk about that for just under 3 minutes. Of course, everybody knows about the problem we've had this past week with the power going out, and this is just the latest in a long line of mechanical failures in the building. We've had a roof that needed repairing. We had mold in the basement. We've had a number of HVAC issues. And I believe that the library is becoming like an old car. It's taken us a lot of places, taken us to work, family vacations, and we're now paying more to the repair shop than we would pay to the dealership for a new car. We also have to recognize that the library isn't big enough. We had the consultants report this summer that indicated that based on the current population of the city of Troy, the library is only about half of the minimum size that would be recommended for a library. So it isn't big enough either. And I wanted to let you know that things almost got worse this morning. The power generator went out shortly after the library opened. The volunteers were going to work in the basement to restock the bookshop, And fortunately, nobody had gotten into the elevator to ride down yet. So when the power went out and was out for a while, nobody was stuck in the elevator, and nobody was stuck in the basement with, I guess there's a certain amount of emergency lighting. I'm not sure how good that is. I would point out that the first volunteer in this morning is somebody with limited mobility, and if the power had gone out while she was in the basement, that she would have had a very difficult time getting out up the stairs because she just doesn't have that kind of mobility. So I know that you're working on a schematic print for a new library. I hope that that goes very smoothly and quickly, and I am encouraged by what I heard at the meeting tonight. So thank you all very much for all the things that went into that. And so let's get going on it, huh? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Anyone like to offer any response? Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. There are no council referrals this evening, so we move on to reports. There are several reports. I'd call out 02, the review of Chapter 14A, Elected and Appointed Persons Ethics Ordinance. We all signed the affirmation of that before this meeting started, which we're required to do. I would also like to, as we talk about meetings that need to be scheduled or certain things, would like to address the required ethics training that's part of this ordinance in the new year. So I'm assuming there's consensus, it's also in the ordinance, but we need to look at scheduling something for that at some point in the new year as well.
City manager and I will work together on that and come up with a plan.
Thank you. Any other comments on reports? All right, how about council comments? Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you. I just wanted somebody from city staff maybe to address the graffiti that we've got some emails about that's been kind of popping up, and there was concerns that it was gang activity, which I'm not sure that it's gang activity, but I would like for maybe somebody to address that if possible.
It's like the city managers requested the police chief to come up, or acting police chief.
Read my mind.
No, I actually saw you do it, but yeah.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Absolutely. So we did have multiple people point out and calls about graffiti that popped up around the city, mainly first started in actually city parks, and then we also saw quite a few on electrical transformer boxes around the city. At some point when that started coming up, there was a post on Twitter that started to go a little bit viral relating that graffiti to a violent Brazilian gang potentially taking over the city of Troy. I can tell you that's not the case. The graffiti itself says crunk, if you look at the actual pictures of it. I haven't myself, I've done some research on it, been able to tie that back at all to any Brazilian gang. I'm not sure where that information really came from, aside from it being published on Twitter. Regardless, it's graffiti, and it still is a crime. The destruction of property, it has costs for the city on private property, or on city property, but also to businesses and residents on private property. So we're diligently working on trying to identify the person responsible or people responsible for that. And I know Kurt and the DPW staff is working on getting it cleaned up pretty quickly, and then working also with the public or the private residents that might have to, or businesses that would address it as well. And welcome any other questions if I didn't cover anything there.
Thank you. I appreciate the police department of the city for quickly putting out information on social media about that. That was a very nice response and helped us point people in that direction, and it was, again, nice to see it done before we even need to ask to have it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you. Additional council comments. Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranka.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Councilmember Hamilton, I also have a list for City Manager Nastasi, and we'll have to have a proper catch-up, so we'll make that happen. One of those items on the list, and I know there were some folks in the audience who cared very much about it, but they left. was around the sustainability, the funding from the federal government. And I know Meg was overseeing that work, and I know she's left, so wondering, how is it still moving forward? Who's the point person? And you don't have to answer now, but maybe if there's an update we could have at some point.
Yeah, I could provide an update, but it's definitely moving forward. I know Meg left, she's a big part of it, but we have other people that step forward. We have a whole group of people, and it's very important, so we're definitely working on it, and we'll get something more to you with more details.
Wonderful, thank you.
Additional council comments? Councilmember Chanda, if you don't, I don't want to force anybody.
Same, yeah, I guess same. I also have a long list of items, maybe the same list, but we discussed a little bit earlier, so we will, but congratulations on getting appointed, and I think we have a lot of work to do, so I think next year is going to be very challenging, so work together, seven of us with
Thank you, and I look forward to everyone's list.
With a reminder that it takes 4 of us to actually move on any one of those things on the list. That's the hardest part, right? Additional, Councilmember Hodrick.
Just happy Thanksgiving. And from a public safety perspective, I don't know if this is still the case, but Wednesday night, Thanksgiving Eve, has traditionally been a rough night on the roads in terms of drunk drivers. People coming home, college kids coming home, and getting out with friends. So if we could be mindful and remind Uber, designate a driver, welcome them home, have them have fun, but let's be safe in our community and keep our police department as bored as possible heading into the Thanksgiving holiday. And I just wanted to take a second and say I'm really thankful for the process we just went through. And James, thankful for you hanging in there with us.
Whole year.
And I'm thankful, Frank, that you're at the helm. And I'm thankful for all the participation from the community in the process. We need to work together on a lot of good things. It can't just be us, the city manager, city attorney, and city staff. We need our residents to come around us and with us, working from a place of fact, not Twitter tweets from politicians that are looking to do I don't know what, but truly just work together to take care of our great city. Thank you.
Additional council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Gunn.
Well, I just want to congratulate Frank again, and James, thanks for all your hard work. I know you went through a lot for the last year. And I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and you're welcome.
That was a joke. Indigenous people's joke. I don't know if you knew that. I'm sorry. If you have to explain the joke, Mayor Pro Tem Gunn, it's not a very good one. Yeah. That's the general rule. So.
I got it.
Yeah. Councilor Hamilton.
Just to add to Mayor Pro Tem Gunn, go Lions.
Oh, yeah.
On Thanksgiving.
There you go.
Thanksgiving check. Good. Councilmember Abraham's old reminder about drunk driving check. You've covered some of the important things.
Channeling my inner Edna.
Yeah, right. I guess I just wanted to add one other thing. We thank James. I also want to thank Stacy and City Attorney Bloom, who have done their roles in this process throughout the year. City Attorney Bloom has actually, although she's coordinated some information to us, she's had the least active role in it, just to be clear to the public. I expect that will continue as McGraw-Morris, as the resolution states, will work on the contract with City Manager Nastasi, which I hopefully would look forward to seeing at a soon council meeting? I'm getting late. A council meeting soon, so that we can for sure be on that page and moving forward. I do want to wish all my colleagues a happy Thanksgiving, of course, in the city. And I also want to remind everybody that on Friday, December 6th at 6:30 p.m., we will be doing our annual Christmas tree lighting out in front of City Hall. And the Athens Choir will be there singing. The Troy High Marching Band will be there. I'm hearing Santa may come. So it's always a nice event. And I appreciate how the community turns out for that. And we'll add to that I loved the social media post today on the City of Troy handle about the festivities coming and the holiday lights. Our Big Beaver lights will be on in the DDA district. There's additional lights along the Civic Center area, the new pavilion and ice rink. Actually, it's converting to an ice rink as we speak. Because we always get asked, I would, and I'm not sure anyone's watching tonight about this, but I would love to be able to continue the holiday lights all the way down Big Beaver to DeQuinder, but there's not the electricity there to do it. And the DDA has been actively involved, and that's why it goes from Rochester Road essentially to Coolidge, because that was where that project started and where the electricity actually is. But looking forward to celebrating the holiday season here in the city of Troy, and thankful and grateful for everybody here for the hard decisions that got made tonight, but continually will be made over this next year, especially as we move forward. And I don't know, thankful. I'm very thankful. So that said, nobody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We don't have a closed session, so we will adjourn.